going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 2 prop stream for the Genesis Scottish Open. Gonna get you guys ready for all of your exposure with a look at some of the stat averages, weather for tomorrow, also pin locations and how that'll impact play to give you an idea of how to attack all of your slips, whether that's an Underdog or Prize Picks, the sports books as well. We'll talk about some matchups towards the end too, as well as any questions or deep dives that you've got on anything in particular. Just let me know in that live chat. We've got Jason down there, Christian also early too, and nice to have you. I know you can only make the early ones, but glad to have it even if you're a part of the replay crew. But if you guys are watching this, go ahead and smash that like button if you haven't already, whether you're in here live or usually on the replay crew like Ernie. We still love you either way. And we've got Steven down there too. Let's get after it, everyone. So first thing we're going to go through would be the PGA side of things. So we're going to talk about LIV golf towards the end too, but for the sake of simplicity, let's start with the PGA side. So today the scoring average was about even par, way harder than we had in 2024, which was what I was calling for yesterday. Course read was really spot on. I thought it would play between even to minus 0.5, and it played 7/100ths of a stroke under par. So pretty, I would say about as close as we could possibly get there. Birdie average was 3.42 per round, so that went down about 0.5 compared to 2024. And the bogey average went up about 0.4 to 0.5 per round. So everything across the board was harder this year. Fairway average even went down about a fairway compared to last year, and your green average also went down quite significantly. So every category was impacted. Even the ones that I didn't think was going to be as impacted, like the fairway rate, went down quite significantly. And tomorrow, it does look like in the morning, it'll be a bit calmer than today. So I think the morning wave could play to a slightly easier scoring average, but in the afternoon when the winds are kicking up, just like they were for most of round 1, expect to see very similar averages to here. So just to kind of break it down by morning, afternoon, morning played like 0.2 under, afternoon played like 0.2 over. So that was mostly due to the course firming up. Tomorrow morning, it might play like half a stroke under par, maybe even just a little bit better than half a stroke under par. Afternoon wave, though, it's probably going to play over par, just like it did for round number 1. So that's why for showdown purposes, for fantasy on the other live stream, I mentioned taking some of the morning starters with that advantage. But from the prop side of things, it's something to consider as well. If it's going to be a 0.75 to 1 stroke advantage for one side versus the other, then you got to be baking that in when you're looking at some of these boards. So when we're looking at AM guys, right, that gives those guys a little bit of a boost, maybe a slightly higher birdie projection, slightly lower strokes projection, etc., etc. Whereas a PM wave tee time, right, a half stroke to a 1 stroke difference, matters when you're looking at fades in the afternoon. So I think your positive stance plays, the best place to take them would be in the morning. Your fades would be best to be taken for some of the later starters. And there can be exceptions to the rule. Obviously, if there's a line that is drastically off, you can make that exception. In fact, a slip in one of the props that we're talking about here on Underdog in just a few minutes is going to be an exception to that rule. So you don't have to live by that sort of thing. Just like the afternoon, right? If there's a line that's drastically off where you want to take a positive stance play and they're teeing off in the afternoon, it's okay to do so, but you better be finding a line that is drastic value where even with that sort of effect, it's still into your kind of favor. So and that's the weather. Just to show you guys a few other models on here, like the UKV also has the winds a little bit higher in the afternoon than in the morning. Icon model, same story, Medio Blue, same shit. And then GFS model, maybe a little bit less significant, still has the wind gusts getting a little bit higher in the afternoon, but the sustained winds aren't nearly as drastic in this model. So overall, I think scoring isn't going to change very much. Just maybe that the morning versus afternoon dynamic could be a little bit more severe than what it was in round 1. Next, we're going to go through pin locations, which we did get a normal sheet this time around. If you guys saw the round 1 sheet, it was all in just numerics. It was completely impossible to actually get where the pin locations are. Because it's in a much more straightforward format, we're able to go through it together. So speaking of, let's go to hole number 1, which is going to be on this front left corner. It's a shorter shot in, I would say slightly easier than today's pin location, But the reason why it's not easier, and I said slightly before that, is because it is tucked towards that front corner. And the one thing you know about link screens is that they're slightly raised up, which means those front pin locations can be a little hard to get to, especially on link soil, which isn't as receptive as what we get in America. So this front pin may be slightly easier, but it isn't that much easier like it would be over on this side of the pond. Next up, we have 2, which is a middle right pin. It's on top of this little shelf on the right. So about where my cursor is now, I would say a slightly harder pin than today, which, on paper, maybe it looks like an easier pin, but because of that sloping, it's going to be a little tricky if you run behind it, right? People are going to be scared of going down that slope and beyond it. And then if you miss short of it, it could be a little bit of a dicier up and down for 2. Like you could see some 3 putts at hole 2. Next up, we have your first par 5, which is on the front right corner. So I would say an easier pin than today. So this is an example of them giving the players a bone, but there's also going to be examples like 18 in particular that are absolutely brutal hole locations. Next up, we have 4, which is in the back left, a slightly harder pin than today. So I would say it's not that much harder, though, because just like you had it too, this sloping today added some difficulty to this round 1 pin. So though it is a slightly longer shot, there's not going to be as much sloping to deal with there. So probably not that much of a change scoring average wise. 5 is much harder. So 5 is now in the back portion of the green. It is a drivable par 4. So it's still going to be one of the easier holes on the course. But the up and down is a much harder prospect because it's in this back corner as opposed to on the front right. It wasn't a cupcake up and down because you had the sloping around the pin location, but to this back corner, it adds a little bit more complexity to the shot. Next up, we have 6, which is a short par 3. And this pin, if you're new to golf, you would say, oh, this is an easy pin. It's a front one on a short par 3. Well, you would be extremely wrong with this one because this pin location that they're using on this front peninsula is by far the hardest that you have at hole 6. And what we can't really appreciate from the overhead view, and I'm going to try and do so by getting out of the green view, is the sloping that you have around the screen because it's first off a small target. You have the claustrophobic nature of all those bunkers around that front peninsula, and then everything runs off to them. So, and by the way, to the right, I'll bring up the green view again because you can see the sloping here. Anything that's on the right side will run off of the green, as you can see with that sloping there. So it's really like half the size of this peninsula, and it was already small to begin with. And sure, you may go, oh, miss to the left then. Well, this up and down is going to be death to that front pin location. And what you get here is that people hit it into the pot bunkers and sometimes can't even get out. And then even when you can get out of those pot bunkers, it's such a narrow portion of the green that really the smart play is to hit it towards the fat side of the green away from the pin location and then to try and 2-putt for a bogey. So because what'll happen is when they try and go for it because of the awkward lies in these pot bunkers is you end up playing ping pong back and forth. And like I said, because everything slopes towards those bunkers, when you're playing ping pong, you're not playing ping pong into the fairway on the other side. You're playing ping pong into other pot bunkers that in turn can lead to the exact same thing happening. So that's why this pin location is infamous for being the hardest at this hole. And you've seen people make 8 to 10 at this hole with this pin location. So don't sleep on this hole. If you're taking like an under on strokes and your guy's like -4 and you think, you're home sailing at this point and they haven't played hole 6, let's say they started on the other side, the back 9, let them go through 6 before you start victory lapping because I've seen some really crazy stuff happen there. Next up, you have 7, which is a back middle pin location. So it's about where my cursor is now. I would say slightly harder than today, but it's not that much different. It's a longer shot. That's really where most of the complexity and difficulty comes in. But that sloping to the left was a little bit of a wrinkle they had to deal with today. Next up, we have 8, which is in the middle left of this green. So it's a medium length par 4, and I would say about the same difficulty as today. I mean, maybe slightly harder just because the slope to the left is a little bit more severe than the sloping that they had towards the right side of that green today. Next up, we have 9, which is a hard par 3. That is going to be in the backside too. So it's long and it's going to play even longer for round number 2. And yeah, pin location too, it's not really like on a shelf or anything, but today you had a backstop to help you hit it closer to the hole. Now you've got no backstop and perhaps an even longer hole for round 2. Next up, we have 10. So on the backside, the first par 5 is, I would say, an easier pin. So the first par 5 on the front was also easier. This one too. So I don't think birdies are going to be impossible to come by. It's just that like the harder holes, like the longer par 4s, are in a lot of cases harder than what you had for round 1. So you might see slightly more birdies on holes like 3, and then obviously 10 here is the second par 5, but the rest of the holes are probably going to take away from that. It's on this middle left, so you do have the slope to worry about, but if you're coming in with your normal second shot, it's a pretty decent angle towards this middle left, and you saw a lot of people hitting it there today with their second shots, so don't be surprised if some people hit it close. Next up, we have 11. So this is a long par 4. It is a shorter pin location, though. So it's probably going to play like 490 towards this front pin. And it's still going to be a hard hole because it's a long par 4. But I would say an easier pin than the first day. Next up, we have 12. So it's a long par 3. This is a harder pin than today. Today did kind of bring in this wall to the right, but now it's a longer shot into this green. And the sloping to the right can help people that hit a draw, but it does make hitting a fade a little bit more awkward into that pin location. Next up, you have 13, which is a front middle pin location. This should be one of the easier holes of the day. Don't sleep on the slope towards the left side, though, because if you're a drawer of the golf ball, you could easily overdraw it and then end up in this low area. And I've seen people 3-putt down there a whole bunch of times on the shot tracker before. It's a really terrible slope to go down, as you can see there, and getting it back on top is not as trivial as you may think. Next up, we have 14, which is a front right pin. It's a kind of about where my cursor is now. So like almost like towards the middle rather than the front side. I would say slightly easier than today on paper maybe, but this wall to the right, at least the blow up risk at hole 14 is going to be a lot higher, because if you hit it close to that wall, you might have to hit it off the wall, then try and bounce it back. You might have to take an unplayable if the lie is terrible enough and laying up against it. You're not going to see those kind of shots when it's like a left pin like today. But for round 2, when it's on that right side, at least one, maybe 2 players out of the 155 are going to end up in a situation of bother there. So like 6, if your player hasn't gone through 15, you might want to double check. Sorry, 14. You might want to double check that before they get through there. Next up, we have a middle pin location. So this is an easy one, but on a very difficult hole. So an easier pin location, but still going to be one of the hardest holes on site, as it plays into the wind most days, and it's almost 500 yards. Next up, though, you get a birdie chance. It is a par 5, and it's a slightly, I'd say, about the same kind of pin location as today. I was going to say slightly easier, but really, I don't think there's any difference from going from middle right to middle left here at 16. It's pretty much the same. Just you want to miss on the right now as opposed to missing on the left like today. Next up, we have 17, which is a front right pin location. It's actually not that far from the round 1 pin. It's just shorter into this green complex. So I would say not much change there either, just like 16. And then finally, 18 is the hardest pin on the golf course. This is a Sunday pin location. I'm surprised that they're using it, but it's up on that very back left shelf. So this is going to be bogey central. It is normally one of the harder holes to begin with, but when it's 500 yards, you add in a little bit of wind in the PM wave, and these players are going to be really struggling down the finishing hole. So I think it's a good mix of easier and harder pins. That's why I didn't really have to adjust for it too much when it came to these averages. But yeah, morning, especially with like some of the easier pins to start each 9, I could see somebody getting to -5, maybe even -6 again, just like you saw for today. But when this wind kicks up in the afternoon and get some of those really dicey pin locations, like 9's a hard one, 18 too. The finishers on both sides are absolutely brutal. I think a good score in the afternoon is probably like -3, -4 at the very best. So for DFS purposes, that's another reason why I think targeting the morning players could be it. And another thing to consider from the prop angle as well. So now that we've gone through pin locations, have an idea of exactly what to expect, let's target a few props for tomorrow. So Underdog's the site that has most of their props up so far. They were getting even more up as we were speaking, as we went live before. So let's go ahead and refresh this to see if they added anything else. And then Prize Picks had a LIV golf board up before, but they didn't have anything up on the PGA side. So I'm going to refresh that, see if they've posted anything there. So it looks like it's still just LIV golf. But luckily, Underdog has us covered for a lot of that exposure. So we'll talk through how I'm approaching each of these different tournaments, and then also some matchup stuff after. So if there's any bets, any sort of props on these sites that you guys want my thoughts on, feel free to go ahead and let me know in the live chat. But after we do the prop and pick'em discussion for the next, let's say 10 to 15 minutes here, is when we're going to go to the matchup side. So if you're here for the sportsbook stuff, things like DraftKings, FanDuel, 3-ball matchups, head-to-heads, just sit tight for another 10 to 15 minutes and we'll get there. What's going on, Mark? Welcome on in. What's going on, Sava, too? You're looking at Harry Hall, it looks like. You see, feels like he dealt with the links aspect pretty well. Lovely couple of 3-ball winners. Yeah, we had a couple winners from last night's stream, so that was nice. Hopefully can add on top of that this time. I've got a few I've already picked out that I think you guys might like, too. And yeah, Harry Hall, you're right. I mean, he's from England, so I guess we shouldn't be that surprised about it, but definitely a good round one for him. What's going on, Ernie? He said, you did like most thought the wins were early. 75% of the bettors missed that because of the weather. Yeah, a lot of people don't look at the weather, but yeah, I mean, Ernie, we're always looking at the weather on every single slate. So it wasn't a surprise to us. We knew that that was going to happen. On that challenging hole 6, the green and regulation odds are going off at an average of plus 250. Feels like good value then. So yeah, if you're saying they can hit a green is plus 250, then yeah, I would bet that. I mean, it's a wedge shot in. So like a lot of people are going to hit that green, but if you miss that green regulation, it's not an automatic bogey, but it's going to be like a 60% plus bogey rate if you're missing that front peninsula there. So maybe I misinterpreted what you were saying by that, but if it's plus 250 just to hit a green in regulation there, morning wave guys, like I would say if you can further only look at the guys going off early, that would be the way to go about it. Because when the wind kicks up, it could be a little harder to hit that green. But even at plus 250, I mean, if you're getting that kind of odds, even in windy conditions, I would be taking guys to hit that green. So let me know if I was wrong with that. But yeah, that could be some value. I would agree with you there. Question, you only have prize picks, but you never see the ability to bet on an individual to win on any sport. What's a good app that you can do that in Cali? There's a few exchanges where I think you can do that, but that's just a regular betting thing, right? That's what you get on DraftKings, FanDuel, the actual sports books. Sites like Prize Picks and Underdog are only on player props. So a player prop is a strokes line. That's something like birdies, bogeys, etc. Betting players to win is like betting on somebody to win a baseball game. Like, for example, like you want to bet the Red Sox to win tonight, right? You're not going to be able to do that on a Prize Picks either. You're going to have to do that on a more traditional sports book or some of the exchanges that they have where you're not playing against the house. You're playing against other people that are, picking sides, giving liquidity to certain spots. You can find that kind of site. That's what I would do in Cali. I believe those sites have the legal loophole where you can still play them in California. But yeah, pick 'em sites like Prize Picks, completely different kind of market. What's going on, Illini fan? Welcome on in. He said, keep up the awesome work. Keep up being an absolute sweaty tryhard. I see you in all the live chats. So welcome on in, my dude. You're looking at Colin Morikawa over 67.5. So I'm not against that. I think he's even money. So I guess on Underdog, he's at 0.92x. If on Prize Picks, he's at 67.5 and even money, I could get behind that sort of thing. But with this multiplier, what it does on prize on a site like Underdog is it completely ruins the payout. So we'll see what Prize Picks does. Maybe they bless us with no multiplier on that kind of spot. But I have a few other props that you might want to keep an eye on first. So let's just go through those, and then we'll expand on any sort of questions that you guys have. So the first prop that I took for the PGA side is going to be this over on Marco Penge, who it kind of pains me to want to take this. And in fact, it ended up bumping over the last 15 or so minutes. I posted them on my Patreon page a half an hour ago. So if you were on there, you were able to catch this without a multiplier. But the idea here, and we'll find maybe a replacement to mix in for it. And if not, I like a couple of live golf props that we can take. So it's not the end of the world if we have to go to that side. I actually think there's a lot of value on the live golf board. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. But Marco Penge, he was minus 135 for his over on DraftKings. So I guess if you're a plus EV truther, that's great to see. But if I think the scoring average, and he's a morning wave tee time, by the way, he's towards the very end of the morning wave. Even if I think it's going to play minus 0.5 to minus 0.75 in the morning, because that side's getting slightly better conditions, Marco Penge is a slightly above average DP World Tour player. Like he's got some top 25s in a row heading into this event. That's why he was a pretty popular pick. However, normally he's like an average DP World Tour player. So in this kind of field, I rate him out as a slightly, and I emphasize the word slightly above average player, like in the maybe top like 45% of players, like just like I said, ever so slightly above the average mark. If I think the field average is minus 0.5 to minus 0.75, that puts them at best at like 0.75 to a -1. Right. And I know that's just like napkin math right there, but hopefully gives you guys an idea of why I think this is such value for towards the over. And that's in a best case scenario, right? That's taking the best scoring average, giving him by far the best projection that I think you should give him in this strong of a field. And this is on a DP World Tour field. Like he might be above average on the DP World Tour for sure, especially with his form heading in, but not when he's playing against PGA Tour players for half the field, right? That is a drastic change that these DP World Tour guys aren't ready for. That puts them at best like a 69 projection at this par 70. So at 68.5, I thought it was a no-brainer at even money. In fact, I don't even think it's the worst bet at this 0.92x. But let's talk about the LIV Golf stuff and we're going to come back to the PGA stuff, I promise you guys. But this LIV Golf stuff, especially on Underdog right now, is value just waiting to be attacked. So they're playing at Valderrama, which, if you guys don't know, is a very, very difficult golf course. It's a par 71, and last year it played 1.8 over par. So that means the average score was a 72.8. And if we take a look at the weather conditions, so let's put Andalusia in. We're just going to get in the general area. It really doesn't matter if we're exactly on the golf course. We're in the exact town here with Cadiz. You can see it's 13 to 15 miles an hour sustained. It's 20 to 25 mile an hour wind gusts. So they're calling for it to be a pretty windy day. And last year, the average was plus 1.8 or 72.5. Why the hell do we have guys like Brendan Grace at this kind of number at 70.5? Now, I was able to get him at 70.5 and no multiplier. In fact, if we go to Prize Picks, you can still get him at that number at 70.5. So maybe that's the better place to enter this. And in fact, when they post their board, maybe they'll have Marco Penge on there at 68.5 too, right? You can enter it on Prize Picks for 3x payout. That would be another way to get the same exact props that I took already at perhaps a better payout. But this number made absolutely no sense. The field average is like 72.8. And look at Brendan Grace heading into this event. Brendan Grace heading into this event has gained strokes in 2 straight events, but it's been 0.15 strokes, 0.3 strokes. And this is a per round basis. So like, he had a better than average event, T19, T23 finish. But look before that, minus 0.5 strokes, minus 3.5 strokes, minus 1.8. For the year, he's at best about a field average player. So if we give him field average, that's 72.5 strokes at least. It's 72.8 if he used last year's averages. How in the hell is he at 70.5 strokes? In fact, even with this 0.89x multiplier, I would say it's even better value than that Marco Penge prop you're looking at. So obviously the value was there because the sports books like Underdog ended up moving that fast as hell. But I'm thinking that, we already know that the LIV Golf props are posted over here in Prize Picks. And because Penge is only minus 135 towards the over, I think there's a pretty good chance that gets posted at that number on Prize Picks. So keep an eye on that if you guys want to check that out for some tailing action. But it's a hard golf course. So for example, the average for birdies that year on LIV last year was 2.93 per round. With windy conditions, how the hell is Patrick Reed at 4.5 birdies? And just to show you the reasoning on that one, and I guess I don't have the LIV Golf site up, so I'll just cite it because I already know the stat. He's number 30 on the tour in birdie percentage this year. That's despite him winning his last start on the LIV Tour. Despite him being a top 10 player on that tour, he does not make a whole bunch of birdies. So with the windy conditions, the average at 2.93 per round, to get to 5, he's got to gain 2 birdies to the field to do so, and he's a below average birdie maker of the guys on the LIV Tour. So again, I'll ask the question, why the hell is he 1.5 birdies higher than last year's average if he's a below average birdie maker on the LIV Tour? It makes absolutely no sense. These lines are way off. And the reason why I was going to say that there's value here is if you fade an under on birdies and an over on strokes, I'm just going to click 2 random ones here together. It's a 3x payout. They have the multipliers broken on Underdog right now. So if you want to do a double fade slip and not get dinged for that payout correlation, you can do that. So maybe you want to fade Cam Smith because he's not a very accurate driver. I was hoping that we could get the Brendan Grace at 70.5 because that would have made quite a bit of sense. But even with this 2.67x payout, for a double fade slip, that's really not the worst. I mean, if we were taking two fades, that would normally be 2.7x for taking them together. So it's almost like, even with this multiplier there, that we're just getting the normal payout you'd get for a double fade slip. So I'm not even against doing that. Again, line shop, see what Prize Picks post. They're going to post their full board at some point to see what they have to offer. But that's what I'm thinking on the LIV Golf side, is that it's playing very difficult. We'll leave Patrick Reed in there, and we'll go back to the PGA side and further expand on that, because that is, of course, the main event for this week. I also want to refresh the board to see if maybe they're going to add some birdie lines, bogey lines to the mix here on the Underdog Golf side. But even the PGA side. So let's talk about this board in general. Too optimistic, in my opinion. Like, you've got guys like Scotty at 66.5. Like, I'm not sure I agree with that. You've got guys at 67.5 all over the place. And it is your elite tier players. But to shoot a 67, if I think the average, especially like for the PM Wave players, is going to be even to maybe a little bit over par, that means they have to gain 3, even a little bit over 3 strokes to the field to cover. Scotty Scheffler doesn't average 3 shots gained to the field, right? He averages like 2.5 to 2.8 per round for 2025. Still an absolutely insane average, getting close to that 3 shots gained mark. But this is a 50-50 prop. We're not asking what could happen for round number 2. We're asking more often than not what's going to happen. And, I hate to pick on JT here, but I'm going to. He's one of my favorite players. So, I'm doing this in full earnest. But for him to be at 67.5, even with this multiplier, makes no sense. How the hell are we going to say that on a 50-50 basis that he's going to go under and gain 3 strokes to the field very often, right? He's a PMT time. I know it says 8:32, but remember, they're in Scotland. So this is Eastern time. So he's teeing off in the late afternoon. I would say, even with this multiplier, that would be value towards the over. So maybe you even want to do that as the combination that you take. We're going to see if we can find something without a multiplier to mix in, just because if we do, we're not going to feed Scotty, but just to show you this, right, it'd be a full 3x payout. That's another way that you can kind of hack the payout multipliers on Underdog and get slightly better payouts than what we're used to. So when we catch up on chat, we'll go through the board and find something to mix in with Patrick Reed. And that'll be the second slip I'm entering, because I haven't entered this Patrick Reed prop myself yet. It is something that I've been line shopping and wanting to enter for quite some time. I was kind of hoping that, look at that, Prize Picks would post their board here. Let's see, did they have Penge up? If so, we can just look at that. So the 2 props I already took on Underdog that bumped, which I'm going to post this on my Patreon page too, so that anyone that maybe missed out on it, like that wasn't able to get it in the first half an hour or so, is able to enter it again. You can take the 2 on Prize Picks for the same exact payout that I was able to get. So take those before they move. I think the Brendan Grace prop is off by 2 strokes. Insane value, in my opinion. And then the Marco Penge one is -135 towards the over. And then I think it should be a whole stroke higher, in my opinion. So both worthy of taking. But I guess we'll find something for Patrick Reed now and make it 2 free slips for the live stream. Am I doing anything for the celeb golf? Absolutely not, man. I don't do any of those gimmick things, and that's exactly what that is. That celeb golf is just trying to get 50-50 coin flips right. I'm going to stay away from that. I'm going to stick with the professionals and what I know. If you want to enter a slip for fun over there, you absolutely can. But like I said, it's just 50-50 coin flips at best. 18-hole matchup between Hovland and McIntyre. You're saying, although Hovland played great, surely McIntyre at +160 some value. Yeah, if that's a head-to-head matchup, dude, I 100% agree with you on that. Hovland is going off in the morning, McIntyre's in the afternoon. So the only thing I'm thinking of, Salva, is that's why you have the +160, is that the sportsbook is accounting for that weather difference, which I have to say, like, in a vacuum, I would have them close to even money. With the weather difference, you do have to favor Hovland. Like, I have to say, like, he should be the favorite, but to the point where it's +160 between those two, that feels like it was probably overdone a bit. So yeah, I think the value would be on the McIntyre side, but do keep in mind that the tee time difference is probably why it's priced like that. Not seeing any fairways hit or greens for round 2 in Underdog. Are you missing anything? No, they just are starting to post stuff now, so they don't have the full board up. I would check back a little bit later if you're looking for that stuff. How do I feel about the Fitzpatrick brothers tomorrow? Well, I think Matt Fitzpatrick, especially with his morning tee time, is worth a few looks. His brother has sketchy form on the DP World Tour. He's not really playing his best golf lately. He's been about a field average player at best, and if not losing strokes and missing cuts quite often overseas. So I might stay away from him. But yeah, Matt, there's a reason why he was chalked this week. He's playing some really good golf. Couldn't stay away from that one. Yeah, Abe Answer at 70.5. You're looking at that over. So I liked Brendan Grace a little more just because of the form. Grace, as I showed you, is like at best been average this year. Answers had a little bit of like flashes of brilliance. So to show you that, I'll show you, and especially like the last couple of weeks, he's played better. So last week he had a T16. Week before that, it was a T19 finish. That's what kind of scared me off of fading him in particular. But at 70.5 strokes, I mean, let's just like talk through the pricing real quick. I mean, let's say that he's an above average player, give him a half a stroke gain to the field. Maybe actually, let's be as optimistic as we can about it. Let's give him a stroke gain to the field, which is way over his baseline for this year. At 72.5 for the field average, which by the way is better than last year. I also think that that's pretty optimistic. That would be at a 71.5 projection, which again is optimistic across the board. That's one stroke higher than the 70.5 right there. So I don't think I would lean on the over for sure. I just think that guys like Brendan Grace, perhaps even a few other players that they have on the board, could be better values towards the over that aren't playing as well. But almost everyone on the board. In fact, like to go to this board over here on Live Golf, every single person I would take for the over. Like it's not like it's exclusive to like a few players. Everyone here is at least a stroke too low. Like even John Rahm, like if the scoring average is going to be like 72.5, maybe he's like 0.5 too low, I'd say. Like maybe 69.5 is a good line for him. But Bryson at a course, you can't hit driver around Valderrama all day. It kind of takes away his main weapon. Like I'd probably have him at 70 strokes, like 2.5 shots gained to the field. And let's no diss to Bryson DeChambeau. 2.5 shots gained to the field is elite level stuff, even on the even on the Live Tour. But this board is, in my opinion, way, way too low. And Abraham Answer would be included in that too. So yeah, I'm not shying away from that one at all. But let's find a pairing for P. Reed. So we could go to Xander. I think he was like minus 125 for the over. So I honestly don't care about the plus EV stuff that much. I've come to find that the sports books, particularly for golf, are pretty clueless on a lot of slates. They sometimes act like the weather doesn't exist. Sometimes they act like they didn't look at the pin locations at all. So take it with a grain of salt, what you're seeing on these. But I do want to see where they have Victor Perez. I'm at least curious with the pricing. So let's go to round scores and let's put in Victor and see exactly where they have him. So yeah, he's pretty much even money in either direction. So not too much of a lean. It's a shame here that they don't have more lines posted. But a Harris English, for example, he struggled today. Now, I think he could bounce back. Like, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, but I don't agree with him being minus 145 towards the under. Like, there's no way in hell that with his links struggles in his career, his struggles today, particularly with the putter, that he should be projected to gain 2 strokes to the field average. Like, that just feels like the pendulum has gone way too far on some of these guys. And they do have a lot of AM guys on here. Let's look at Thomas Dietrich. What do his odds look like? What is he like? Minus 120. Actually, yeah, about even money in either direction. But I don't agree with that. Like, let's talk through the Thomas Dietrich stuff. If the scoring average is going to be around, especially in the afternoon, like 70 at best, probably even closer to 70.5 strokes. Let's say that Dietrich in this, like, it's a slightly weaker field because it's against some DP World Tour guys. Let's give him like a stroke gain to the field. That would be a 69.5, right? That's an entire stroke higher than the 68.5 line right there. So I'm kind of talking myself into it more and more I look at this. Let's look at the shots gained metrics. That can be the X factor that gets us onto it or not. He lost 3 strokes on approach today and then gained 4 strokes putting. Yeah, that's going to be the second slip that we take here for round number 2. So when we combine these, it does give us a full 3x payout, gives us a little bit of, more flexibility with what kind of props that we can enter for each event. And they are in relatively close proximity, right? One's in Spain, one's up in Scotland. So, I mean, they're not like a couple hours apart or anything, but there's obviously a front. There's some wind coming through Europe that you're seeing across both golf courses. Not to say that there's quote unquote correlation between these events or anything like that, because there's clearly not, but it's going to be windy. It's going to be difficult at both events. That's why I'm mixing in fades. And rather than taking them together, like for example, the PGA props, you take them together, it's like a 2.5x or a 2.6x payout. The Live Golf stuff's a little bit different here on Underdog just because they screwed up the payout multipliers. But normally, right, it'd be lower payouts. Like on Prize Picks, for example, If you took two fades together, it'd only be 2.5x. The beauty of taking the two events together and playing combo slips is that you don't have to worry about all that kind of BS, right? If you have the same kind of lean for both events, you can enter it this way, and obviously you still have to get both events in your lean right in the course conditions and whatnot, but it works out for a lot of slates like we have here. So for the rest of my exposure that I take, guys, that will probably be a lot more based on what I'm seeing for the value on the board. Make sure to check out my Patreon for all of that on there. I not only post every underdog and prize pick slip that I take, but also the stat averages for every single round and the weather for all these different events. So to give you an idea of exactly how to research them, and with all my plays, I talk through the thought process and exactly why I'm playing them too. So it helps you become a better of golf and try and find some of that value for yourself. And then what we're going to do here is go through a few matchups that I've taken. And these lines, I did get better ones on Hard Rock Bet. So let me actually bring up my account real quick, so I can reference the exact lines that I got, because that was half the reason that I bet these 3 balls. So if you can do some line shopping, maybe check out like Bet365 FanDuel to see what they're offering. See if you can beat what we get here in DraftKings. But it's Justin Rose. I got him at plus 210 against Potgieter and Ryan Fox. Ryan Fox had a really good day, so he's going to be a tough one to beat. But Potgieter was kind of just like today. He's not really a good course fit, I'd say, at a course like this. Justin Rose, though, he gained ball striking and lost in the short game category. So with that kind of potential regression to the mean, and that's positive regression, right? He's normally a much better short game player than what he had for round one. That's why I liked him at plus 210, plus 185. Maybe not so much, but if you can find a slightly better number, I'm for that one. I also got Dan Bradbury. I got him at plus 275. So also a better number than is pictured there. Hard Rock Bet, by the way, is where I entered these myself. So if you do have a Hard Rock Bet, you can get these exact same numbers. But we entered this in round one. It didn't work out. He shot like 4 over par. Wasn't even close, actually, between those 3. But Bud Colley gained like 5 strokes putting today. So if he's the stud in that group, I think that he's attackable in at least in some sense, because he's probably not going to gain 5 strokes putting every single round. That's highly unlikely. Then you have Kreuzwick, who also kind of struggled, like a Bradbury. So you're telling me it's pretty much Bradbury versus Colley, who putted way above his head, and then another guy who struggled. Plus 275 just felt borderline disrespectful. So again, the plus 255, maybe not the best, but still something for maybe you can line shop in and get this close to the same number. And then the last one I took was this Ryan, who this line was drastically off. So this plus 215 is nowhere close to what I took. It is plus 260 that I got on Hard Rock Bet, which Ryan, by the way, is a pretty high caliber player. He makes a crap ton of birdies. He gained ball striking just like a Justin Rose did, and he lost in the 2 short game categories. And if you look at his shots gained profile, he's one of the best putters that we have in all the DP World Tour. So I would expect him to bounce back kind of just like a Justin Rose, right? Normally doesn't lose a whole bunch of strokes on the greens. The plus 260, though, was like half the reason that I took it. And there were a few other matchups that I took that I do have posted on my Patreon page, but they don't even have them on DraftKings. So let me actually just rattle those off now, just in case the sportsbook that you have access to has those. It was Guido Migliozzi. I got it plus 240. So he's going against Riley and Richie Ramsey. Riley today just didn't have his fastball. I'm not really that scared of Riley as the quote-unquote stud in that group. And then Ramsey was all over the place. So I like in Migliozzi, he didn't have his best stuff, but he was about neutral in all 4 categories. So in my opinion, a much more sustainable shots gained profile than Ramsey. And plus 240, again, just felt disrespectful, because like, are we really scared of Davis Riley? I know I'm not. And then finally, the last one I took was Jordan Smith at plus 210, who they also didn't have on DraftKings. But it's Jordan Smith versus Aaron Rai and Haotong Li. Haotong I love, by the way, the Chinese SpongeBob, and came through for us on our prop, by the way. Other side of it, Pendrith didn't hit, but that's all right. At least Chinese SpongeBob did his half of it. But he played horribly round one. And usually when he's out of contention, he kind of ejects. So I don't want to completely cross him off, but mentally he could be a little bit checked out. So I think that would only help us on a Jordan Smith prop. And then the other part is Aaron Rai. Aaron Rai lost strokes ball striking today. And Aaron Rai, I mean, that's normally his calling card. He's one of the best off the tee and approach players in any of these given fields. If he's gaining short game, but losing with the ball striking, then you don't want Aaron Rai. So that was another one that I took, again, plus 210 on that Jordan Smith prop. I think that he should be closer to like plus 150, plus 160 on that sort of line. So I got those as soon as they dropped the Hard Rock Bet board, which they may even have moved on Hard Rock Bet since then because they didn't even have lines to compare to on DraftKings or FanDuel at that point. But they were just like obvious line values to me. So on the Patreon page, on top of some of the Prize Picks and Underdog stuff that I'm entering, you can find some of that over there as well. So make sure to check all of that behind the paywall. But that's all I've got, guys. Best of luck with all of your exposure for the next day. I'm going to see if there's any last second questions to go through. So if you have any for me, go ahead and throw those down in the chat now before we go ahead and end this thing. But for rounds 3 and 4, we're going to be doing the same exact thing. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel here so you guys don't miss any of the content to come. And if you haven't already smashed that like button, first off, what are you guys waiting for? But go ahead and do so as well so you guys don't miss any of the content. Also help more people see this content so they can be helped out with their process. And also, guys, I do have showdown projections that I still put out on my Patreon page too. So if you're somebody that enters DraftKings DFS lineups for round 2 showdown, I did do a live stream on the Ship It Nation YouTube a little bit earlier, but I also have my projections for that. And we mentioned a little bit of that weather edge, but I think the AM guys are getting the better side of it. So you can see my player pool are only AM guys towards the top end of the board. So I've got projected ownership there, my projected points for DraftKings, also my player pool, which, by the way, I don't just tell you guys who I play, but also why I'm playing them as a part of my Patreon page. Make sure to check out all of that. But let's see, any last second questions? Yeah, Hard Rock had the best price on all 3. Yeah, I think it was because they posted the lines first. Like they were first to market, and good on them, right? For having some confidence in themselves and, having the freedom to go out there and do so. Not a lot of other sportsbooks or lines makers can say that. Like Prize Picks Underdog, they seemingly wait for the sportsbook odds every single time these days. And then even those two, they post their odds at the same time, like DraftKings, FanDuel, and then they quickly adjust to get to the same exact numbers. Have some creative freedom. That's what I would say. Ever since I started embracing my creative freedom a little bit more over the last month or so, I was in like a slight rut for a month where like I was doing okay, but not great, not my normal 60, 65% hit rate that I'm used to. But then I kind of took a step back and was like, let's just trust ourselves a little bit more, have that creative freedom. The sports books are wrong. That's what I had to remind myself is I was giving them way too much credit. And I've had a lot of success the last 2 months doing so, even more so than what I was having before. So yeah, Hard Rock Bet, keep at it. It could work out in their favor for all we know, right? They could be on the better side of it, but I like when the sports books do that. So best of luck, guys, with everything that you guys are doing for tomorrow. And I'll see you guys for the round 3 live stream tomorrow.